Hello there. Welcome back to Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. I'm your host, Alex Pavljuk, the digital content strategist here at the Montclair Art Museum. When I first started to explore and experience museums and art institutions for myself, I didn't think much about how the paintings got hung on the walls. Maybe that was a bit ignorant of me, but what did I know? It was my first time at a museum. Then, after a few more trips, I started to notice things in the ways in which the works were carefully documented on the wall labels, categorized in a show, or the nature and complexity of how they may have been installed. And I'm talking paintings, sculptures, armor, in some cases like at the Met, or bones and tombs at, such institutions like the Natural History Museum or other historical institutions of the sort. And with some little digging, common sense, and eventually my first day or two at MAM when I started here as an intern over 2 years ago, I quickly learned about the role and job of a museum's curatorial team. What I came to learn at first, from the outside looking in, was that the curators were seemingly the beginning and the end of the process. Again, rather ignorantly. At first glance, they knew the historical and cultural importance and legacy of the art. They seemed to be the leading voice in how an exhibition was to shape out, and often were the people who museum goers, docents, or even staffers looked to as the defining voice when it came to anything involving the art on view or in our collection. It was easy to see how so many people, and for a brief moment myself included, didn't know what happened behind the scenes in curatorial beyond that focal and prominently public-facing job. Then what I came to quickly learn was that curatorial teams are very obviously much more than just the curators who do the public chats on stage and lead and teach the docents about how to properly educate an audience on the works. There are, like I had pondered since some of my early museum visits, obviously the art handlers who hang and stage and prep the works in a show, the registrar who catalogs and keeps track of everything in a museum's collection, the exhibition designers who help make the vision of the curator become a tangible and functional space, the conservators who clean and protect the artwork, and, of course, like the support staff, like those curatorial assistants who aid in research and coordination, label writing, and so much else. Frankly, I think the work of a curatorial team is so fascinating. And in fact, peeling back the layers on that onion has been one of the defining and main points of content that I have strived to create while working here at MAM in a content forward position. As somebody who has to make things that are interesting and engaging for the public, when I look back at, when I first started creating content and working social media for the museum, I tried to think of things where me as somebody who was not associated with the museum previously, what would have been interesting to me. And that was always, well, what's behind the scenes? How is the art getting on the wall? Who's involved in that? What does that process look like? That was it. That was the thing that people really wanted to see. So it was really important to me to chat with somebody from our curatorial staff who can speak to what it's like on the ground floor and to express to our listeners what other roles are present and possible within a curatorial staff. So, without any more delay, here is the Montclair Art Museum's curatorial assistant to help answer the question, what is it like to work in a curatorial department? Hi, Audrey.
Hi, Alex.
I'm sorry for dragging you into this.
I'm really excited, actually. I'm excited to see what you have to ask.
Okay, that's good to know. Before we jump into anything, who are you?
My name is Audrey. I am the curatorial assistant at the Montclair Art Museum. So I help Gail and Laura to design the exhibitions and do the write-ups and the research and all of the administrative work that goes along with that.
Yeah. I think that sometimes people, you think about what goes into a museum and whatnot. I know when I first started to get into museums, I didn't think about how it got in the wall. I really didn't think about that. And on top of not knowing how the art got onto the wall, I didn't really understand the clerical work that also goes into it.
A lot of clerical work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of contracts and things like that that I haven't really gotten experience with until recently. So
is it the glamorous world that you thought it would be?
Parts of it have been more glamorous than I could have even expected.
Yeah.
Other parts have been far less glamorous than I ever anticipated.
Yeah. Did you what did you study?
I was an art history major at
Ah,
Rutgers.
yes.
I actually wasn't fully aware of what a curator did until probably like my second year as
And
an art history major.
I think that's super interesting because obviously me, no art history background here. I didn't know what a curator was really until I started here. And so the fact it makes me feel more comfort in knowing that you, someone who now works in curatorial and this is your life. This is what you now live and breathe and do for a living. Didn't necessarily know the full scope of that. So that makes me feel better as somebody who
Yeah, I
hosts
think
this
I'm
silly
still
little
kind of
show.
figuring it out. Luckily, I went to a school where a lot of my professors were curators in their own right, aside from being a
Mm,
professor. So I kind of got a lot of experience in watching them design exhibitions and all of the complications that come up throughout the whole process.
yeah.
So.
I think that there's sometimes a little bit of for people that do know what curatorial work is and maybe do understand the role of a in the case of Gail or Laura, like a chief curator or like a lead curator, but there's so many other positions and jobs and grunt work that has to get done, whether you're actually like installing or in the case of like Osana, like the registrar, like taking care of like the keeping tabs on the collection. um you know for an audience who may be interested in getting into museum work and don't necessarily know the other roles that go with it, like such as yours, what is there in curatorial that is like available for people?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of
Because it's mysterious.
avenues.
It
It
is.
is. It is.
It's kind of like,
The
honestly,
arts. Go ahead.
not to keep rambling, but it's kind of like I took a book publishing class because I'm a writer and I am interested in one day traditionally publishing a book of some sort, and I didn't realize how mystical and mysterious and veiled the whole industry is, and I feel like sometimes curatorial work can feel that way.
Yeah, and I think historically that has been the case with the arts as a whole, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And it's something that institutions like MAM are trying to change, like making the arts less mysterious and elitist and kind of offering that level of accessibility that maybe wasn't available to people
Yeah.
until very recently. The whole industry is kind of changing, but there are a lot of different avenues that you could go within this kind of work.
Mhm.
Within any given institution's curatorial department, there are registrars, like you said, Osana and Katie, who do a lot of the management and data collection for the actual objects. There are people like Gail, Laura, and myself who are more focused on the writing and the research and the interactions with the artists. For a lot of institutions, they also even have data analytics teams that handle a lot of the kind of stuff that we're lucky enough to have Osana and Katie managing. But
Yeah. We all wear a lot of hats here.
yeah, but I do think it's important for people to kind of, if you are interested in the field, figure out what exactly you like about it. I mean, loving art, I think, is a given if you're looking
Yeah.
to become like an art history major or to work at a museum.
Talk to me a little bit about your art history major. What was your like area of expertise or like interest?
So,
There's a big, for visually a very big deep breath and sigh.
I actually started out at Rutgers as a marketing major. And
You could have been here. You could
I still could have been here.
Oh my God, you could have been on, I mean, like this side of the microphone. You could have been on, and
Yeah,
you could have been in the other building.
I could have. And I have done marketing and social media positions in the past. I actually had my first job at MAM before I even switched majors. So this, I think, was one of those experiences that.
What did you do here?
I was a summer art counselor. So MAM has an incredible summer art program. It's a camp for kids, I think, between the ages of 5 and 17.
Yeah.
So I was teaching ceramics. I was teaching fashion classes,
So
sculpture
you
classes.
were an artist too.
I was, yeah. I've always been
I mean, I'm not saying
art
you
person.
aren't an artist still, but you know what I mean.
Different kind of art. Yeah, I've always been an art person. I was involved in stage crew in high school, all of the art clubs I possibly could have been a part of. But I think a big reason that I got into it is because I'm very into history and storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of narratives that haven't traditionally been accessible for people in the art sphere. And I would love to bring some light to those narratives. And that's something that MAM does a really good job of. And
yeah, we're trying, plugging away at it, you know. While you're talking, you kind of talking about, you know, your experience with art making personally, with your studies at school. Melissa, who, you know, obviously for people who listen to this show regularly, know Melissa is like kind of our impromptu guest host who steps in when I can't get a guest on the show. And we talk about whatever. And I usually put her art history brain to work. But she told me a story on probably, I think, the first episode of this show where she started at the museum in admissions. She worked at the admissions desk for a few weeks before Asif scooped her up and brought her to marketing. And her, I don't remember if it was like her thesis or like some one of her like final big huge papers was on Jim Dine. And when she got here, little did she know she would be working at the admission desk directly across from a Jim Dine work. And I'm curious for you, as somebody who's now very intimately involved in the art and curation process, as an art history person who certainly had to probably learn extensively about a lot of artists that are here, did you have a moment like that?
Definitely. I actually got the opportunity to meet Nanette Carter in person at our last opening, plugging the new exhibition that's coming out. There is a Nanette Carter retrospective that will be happening at MAM.
Nanette Carter, Shifting Perspectives, coming soon.
Just a few months.
Yeah.
And she was one of those artists that I learned a lot about during my undergrad experience, in my grad experience too, actually. One of my professors used to talk a lot about her because we spoke a lot about local New Jersey-based artists. There were some huge, really influential movements in this area.
Really?
Yeah, particularly within the past, 30 years, arts collectives. I know the Newark Museum has a lot of things that focus on that, but some of the same works that I've seen here, I saw on display at the Zimmerli at Rutgers University when I was working there. And they were even part of, I worked at Johnson & Johnson shortly, managing their arts.
Johnson & Johnson has an arts
They have an art collection. Yeah, they do.
Where is it?
Down in New Brunswick at their world headquarters. They have around 4,000 pieces in the collection. So it's a really big collection.
Learn something new every day. That's crazy.
Yeah, and they had a lot of the same work that we have in this collection here that they had at the Zimmerli, prints and things like that. So it's been really exciting to kind of actually see these people in real life and to be so hands-on with the artwork that I learned about in school,
Yeah. What was it like? Because you just spoke to the fact that you worked here as like a teenager doing like the summer art stuff. Now that you're here like full time every day, just like in the thick of it, like, is it strange? Like, is it kind of like a little surreal?
Yeah, it still is. I think I find myself having moments where I realize that I'm in the part of my life that I studied for so many years to get to.
It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, attending the openings and things like that.
Yeah.
And even for a long time, just as a member at MAM, I would come to the opening events and I would watch Gail from afar, and now I get to sit 10 feet away.
I was going to save it for later, but we'll talk about it now. I want to talk about how we first met.
Yeah. So I was super pushy, I guess. And
I wouldn't say you're pushy, but
adamant about getting a job here.
You were. So the first time Audrey and I met was at the opening of our now closed show, Century 100 Years of Black Art at MAM. And my job at the museum is to, especially at these openings, take photos and videos and create social posts and eventually videos down the line and just gather content. And at the time, I was simply part-time. I was not even here full-time yet. And Audrey and a friend of yours approached me, and you, which I don't remember if you probably do the way you're wincing, but you picked up my badge and looked at it, and you went, "So you think you can get me a job here?"
Don't remember the picking up the badge.
You grabbed my badge and looked at it to see if I was worth talking to.
A testament to how much of an effect MAM had on me and how badly I wanted to work here.
Yeah. I don't remember what I who I pointed you towards, but I think I might have said like Francis or somebody because
Yeah.
I didn't, at the time, like there weren't any openings in Curatorial at that point. There was an opening that I knew of in development, so I didn't it wasn't in vain. I did try.
Yeah, and actually after I think you had directed me to Francis, you had pointed to Gail, who is our chief curator,
and now your boss.
And now my boss. And I think you had also pointed me to Alexandra, who had this position before me.
Yes.
And at the time, the curatorial assistant position was not open, but I stuck to my goal, and I messaged Alexandra on LinkedIn a few days later, and we had a little bit of discourse. And then when she found another position that she was moving on to, she let me know that her position was opening up. And she was able to give me a recommendation.
Networking, everybody.
Here I am.
Networking, baby.
So when your parents tell you to go shake someone's hand physically at the place you're trying to get a job, maybe there's a little bit of truth.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit of truth. I don't want to keep you too much longer, so thank you so much for doing this. I do have a few more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a favorite piece that's on view right now? I don't know. I'm always curious. And I feel like we don't necessarily get to talk too much about the artwork in particular when we're interacting professionally.
Yeah. I think one of my favorites has always been Tom Nussbaum's Listen.
Mm-hmm.
It is probably one of our most well-known pieces.
It's very iconic for the museum.
And I'm super big on community involvement and programming. That's one of the big draws of MAM for me. And I remember that piece being interacted with all the kids at the summer art program. And I remember how they had so much fun with it. And I think that's such an important part of a museum's shifting role in society, like not just to be an arbiter of culture and an educational facility, but to also kind of be a space for the local community and for people to make it their own. And, we are working on actually restoring it at the moment in some capacities, but you can even see a little bit of wear and tear from the kids climbing on it and playing with it. And I love that kind of interaction. And so much of his work is focused on public art installations and being present in our communities, which I think is super important.
It is. It's so important. I think the way that you talk about summer art and the way that you talk about kids programming and the museum being a beacon of community and progress and it's something to be prideful of, something that can be really a point of engagement for a lot of people. It actually hasn't come up a lot recently. I think this show is shifting a little bit in aim and perspective. I mean, the unwavering goal, which will always be, when it comes to this podcast, is democratizing art and making sure that art and museums can feel and are and be, a tangible and accessible vessel for people to learn about and further their enjoyment and appreciation of art. And so, the way that I hear you talk about it is really impactful and powerful. And it brings me back to, I think, the central question, which started this entire show however many months ago when we launched. How do you approach a museum for the first time? And I think you have a really unique lens on how to approach a museum for the first time as a newcomer, because you watched kids come here for the first time. And so I guess as like my final question, my very long-winded question, how do you approach a museum for the first time?
I would say that you should use all of the resources that are made available to you there. I think a lot of people are shy to ask the docents or the guards to talk about the work, or unsure of themselves when it comes to signing up for classes or lectures. And I think people should really know that the staffers at your favorite museum really want you to use us.
We really care.
We really care.
We care a lot.
We really care. And it's an educational facility. We want to be of service to our community. If you have ideas for your local museum, go ahead and send them an email. I will open it and I will read it, and I'll pass along your message to the best of my ability. We really do try to maximize the resources that we have available for people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Audrey, thank you so much for sitting down with me for this impromptu episode. What can people expect to see at the Montclair Art Museum this upcoming season?
Well, we have a lot of really cool shows coming up. We have a show on the past 25 years of collecting at MAM. It's called A to Z. It's also going to be going up with...
Z as in S-Z-E.
As in S-Z-E.
For Sarah
Z, the artist. She does a lot of really cool installation work that everyone should check out. And it's also going to be going along with a photography version of another 25 years of collecting show. So that, I think, is really important for anyone who wants to get to know what the curator's goal has been for the past 25 years, the direction that she's been trying to push the museum into. We also have the Nanette Carter retrospective that's coming up, and if you're into local New Jersey contemporary and modern art, you should definitely check that out. We also already have one of her banners up, and one of the most exciting projects is our recent Interwoven Power, which I know you've already spoken a lot about.
And we will continue to do so.
But I think it's important for a lot of museums across the world to kind of focus their narratives around some of the communities that maybe have been historically disenfranchised by arts institutions. And that's what Montclair is trying to do. We have repatriation projects going on. We are consulting local Native community members and local chiefs to kind of talk about a lot of the issues that I think have been ignored in arts institutions for a really long time. So there's a lot of important stuff going on here right now.
There really is. And yeah, with that, thank you so much, Audrey. I really appreciate it. I do.
I hope I could answer some questions.
I think you did. You certainly did.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this episode with Audrey. It was really great to chat with her about everything that, you know, people might not see from the outside looking in about a curatorial department. It's really important work, and, you know, I'm just thrilled that we got to shine a light on it, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. You know, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this episode. Again, I'm Alex Pavljuk, the digital content strategist here at the Montclair Art Museum. The museum's open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can find tickets online or in person. You can also follow us on Instagram. Our handle is @MAM Montclair. That's MAM Montclair. We're on TikTok. Just search the Montclair Art Museum. We're on YouTube. Same thing, the Montclair Art Museum. You can also obviously listen to this podcast wherever it is that you're streaming it. Please share it with friends. Tell people about it. You interested in museums? You have friends that are interested in museums? You have, you know, possibly classmates who, you know, are interested in museums? Share it with them. It really helps us, you know, rate, review us on Apple and Spotify and all those places. It really does make a difference. So that's it. This has been Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.